The wait is finally over. It is time. The opponent preview episodes are here. And the part one of the same place opponent preview episode of the Bears Talk Underground is brought to you by our friends at SeatGeek. Let SeatGeek take the confusion out of your ticket buying experience. Instead of shopping dozens of sites to find the best deal, let SeatGeek do the work for you. Their app scans the web for the best deals to your favorite game, concert, or show and rates them on a scale of 0 to 10 to let you know if you're getting the best bang for your buck. A green dot marks great deals, a yellow dot good deals, and a red dot not so good. Use promo code ACAA as an Armchair All-Americans at checkout to receive $20 off your first purchase. So what are you waiting for? That's promo code ACAA for $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek, life's an event. We have the tickets. And part one of the same place opponent preview is also brought to you by MyBookie. Between their live in-game betting, endless props, fantasy sports wagers, there is something for everybody to get in on at MyBookie. With the best player perks in the sportsbook business, they've been good to us, and I know that they'll be good to you. The NBA Finals are in full swing now with the Raptors and the Warriors, the Bruins and the Blues getting it done in the Stanley Cup Final. Plus, you know, we have tons of baseball going on now that we're getting into the heart of the season. And MyBookie is hooking up my listeners all month. Visit mybookie.ag and use the promo code BEARS100 when creating your account to claim your 50% bonus. Laying down $100, now you've got $150 to play with. That's MyBookie, MyBookie.ag, promo code BEARS100. MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid. And it took some doing to get this episode done. We had some starts, some stops, some finishes, some technical issues, so on and so forth. I had 3 different guests, and the third one was the lucky charm. We finally got it done. Same place opponent, episode number 1, as our opponent previews finally get underway with the New Orleans Saints and Ross Jackson from the Locked On Saints podcast. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get the show started so we can get to our interview. It's my least favorite part of the LFL calendar year, but it is quite frankly my favorite part of doing the podcast, quite frankly, are these opponent preview episodes, meeting up with old friends, introducing ourselves to new ones, and getting ourselves prepared as we sit down and try to learn what there is to know about our opponents upcoming in the 2019 season from the people that know them best. Fellow fans that love their beloved as much as we love ours. So what's going on, everybody? Larry back, opponent preview episode number 1, part 1 of the same place opponent previews. We are going to be starting with the New Orleans Saints. Ross Jackson from the Locked On Saints podcast will be joining us here in just a few moments to get things started, get things underway. Ross was actually the third person that I ended up getting on the line or on the hook for doing the podcast and previewing the Saints. We have a Saints show here on the Armchair Network. My sister podcast, the Saints Happy Hour. One of the hosts of that show, Ralph Marble, was scheduled to be the first person I spoke to on Tuesday night. Unfortunately, he had a family emergency, had to back out at the last minute. For those of you who have been with me a while, you might remember Tyler Raymond from the Who Dat Dish podcast. He was on the show when the Bears played the Saints back in 2017. I actually got Tyler on the line, went through the interview. Everything went great. And when I went back to listen to it, turns out that the Skyped up update that I did turned off, blocked all outside software from recording. So all I had was my side of the conversation. His was not. And when Ralph dropped out, I reached out to both Tyler and Ross to see if they would be available to be able to come on the show. Both responded. So I was actually going to try to divvy this up in a way to have them both on the show. As far as editing is concerned, it's a good thing that Tyler's show wasn't able to be used, I should say. And, I don't have to worry about trying to split it up between the two guys and don't have to try to figure out how that's going to work. But, unfortunately, we weren't able to keep anything that we did with Tyler. But Ross Jackson from the Locked On Saints podcast has definitely hooked us up. A lot of good stuff when we talk to him. And, these are big games for the Bears this year. Week number 7, we get the Saints at home. It's our first game after the bye, and we all know how the Bears performed coming off bye weeks last year. We get that hot 3-1 start. We get the bye week after the first 4 weeks, and then come and basically laid a huge egg against the Miami Dolphins week number 6. We'll have to see. Hopefully, and then in week 12, 13, whatever it was, after our mini bye from the Thanksgiving game, we had 10 days to get ready for the New York Giants, and went out there and our 8-3 team that was on a 5-game winning streak loses to a 3-8 Giants squad. I mean, that's not good. The Bears are an 0-2 coming off the break, so hopefully Matt Nagy will be able to correct whatever he didn't do to prepare the team coming off of those breaks, because the coaching tree that he's a part of, Andy Reid, is notorious for being a victor after bye week. So maybe he had to go back to the drawing board and get some tips from Andy Reid on how to get his team ready to come off of the bye, because we got the Saints coming off the bye this year, so that's not a game that you want to sleep on, whether it's at home or not. And that's actually one thing that's different from last year, is that both of our little bye weeks, if you will, last year we were on the road. First at Miami, then at New York. This year, I don't remember where we are after. No, we're at home both times, actually. We're at home against the Saints after the bye for week 6. And then when we play Detroit on the road on Thanksgiving Day, after our mini bye there, we're at home for the Cowboys. So maybe that's what was going on. We didn't play well on the road, and we didn't meet expectations, or we didn't play to our opponent's level, or whatever you want to call it, that went wrong with those games. But nonetheless, it's a big game. Week number 7, the team should be pretty well established as to their identity in the 2019 season by the time they meet each other there. So it'll be very interesting to see how that one all turns out. But the Saints are going to be an interesting team this year. They play in that schizophrenic division that is the NFC South, where teams are in the playoffs this year. They're out of the playoffs that year. Like in 2017, they had 3 playoff teams. They had the Saints, the Falcons, and the Panthers all made it to the playoffs. In 2018, the Saints was the only team above 500 that got even to sniff the playoffs. Everybody else below 500, or actually you don't get worse than below 500, but there you go. And so we'll see. Bruce Arians, the new head coach out there in Tampa Bay. If the Panthers are following the pattern, they went to the Super Bowl in 2015. A dud in 2016. Playoffs in 2017, a dud in 2018. If pattern holds, they should be good this year. So we'll see. The Falcons, I chalk up last season, to the Super Bowl loser curse. They suffered a lot of injuries on the defensive side of the ball, and that curse is real, man. It happens year in and year out. You lose Super Bowl, you tend not to be able to find your way back to the postseason the year after. There are some exceptions to the rule, but it doesn't happen often. So we'll see how that whole division turns out. Will the Saints be able to hold everyone off again this year and represent the NFC South in the playoffs, or will they be down looking up at whoever reigns supreme in the South Division this year? Before we get to our guest, Ross Jackson, we have some news and notes. And real quick, I put a post out on the interwebs. On Twitter and on Facebook, asking you guys for ideas for these shows, basically, because this is that time of year. Yes, OTAs have been going on the last couple of weeks, but there's not a lot of news coming out of OTAs. We have some today, thank God, but as we move through these episodes, we have 14 of them. This is number 1 of 14. We have our same place opponents. Next week, we'll start with the AFC West. Then we'll have the NFC East, and then finish off with the NFC North and our beloved Chicago Bears. And when we get to the Bears episode, we should be around early to mid-July. So we should be about a week or 2 out from training camp when that episode takes place. There's not a lot going on in that time period, so there won't be much of anything for news and notes for me to do. And I don't really like to just dive right into the interviews. Maybe I want to do a little something. And I talked to you guys previously about doing like off the subject, like something not related to football or not related to the Bears. And I put that out there on Facebook. I've already got some interesting ideas. So we'll be starting to sprinkle those in. But if you have any thoughts, any ideas of your own off the subject ideas, anything but Bears or football, just to do a little something fun, add a little color to the show, if you will. So any ideas that you have there, at BTU_Larry on Twitter, and just search Bears Talk Underground on Facebook and toss in your ideas. So we do have some news and notes today, some interesting news, actually. Trey Burton, it turns out, had surgery. We thought that Anthony Miller's shoulder repair was the only surgery that the Bears were going to have on any of their players this year. It turns out Trey Burton, that groin injury that was bothering him or that kept him out of the Philadelphia game, the wild card game, was something that they went ahead and had taken care of surgically. Sports hernia surgery. He's been sitting out of OTAs, but he should be ready to go by training camp, according to Matt Nagy. I watched one of his press conferences after OTA practice this week. So doesn't sound like the Bears are alarmed or concerned. It very well could be one of the reasons why Bradley Soul is a tight end now, to add some depth to that room with Trey Burton likely out for the rest of the off season. But like I said, he should be ready to go for training camp, so we'll see what happens there. Speaking of offensive linemen, the Bears went ahead and added another offensive lineman to the roster. Offensive tackle T.J. Clemens, a former Vikings draft pick. I believe he was a fourth rounder out of Pittsburgh. Started 30 games for them his first couple of seasons in the league. Did not work out in Minnesota. He spent the season with Oakland last year, and the Bears just signed him today and added him to the 90-man roster. If it works out, he's got experience. He knows how to play the game, and he was a talented tackle, a talented offensive lineman in college. If it works out and the new scenery is just what the doctor called for, then he could be a good depth piece for us, or at the very least could challenge Rashad Coward for that swing tackle position, or maybe they move him to the inside. The Vikings move their guys around a lot because they suffered a lot of injuries on the offensive line. So I do believe that T.J. Clemens has clocked in some time at guard, so can't hurt to add more depth to the interior line. So if things work out, that could be a good signing for us. And the rest of it is just kind of fun stuff. Apparently the Bears, a group of the Bears, went to the White Sox game today, but they had a little pregame fun at Top Golf in the Chicagoland area. And Kyle Long posted on Twitter a video of James Daniels and his golf swing, or what he was calling a golf swing. It's only about a 4-second video of James Daniels swinging at the golf club and missing it horribly. Like, he dug up more of the AstroTurf around the ball than he did hitting the actual ball itself. So that was interesting. And at the White Sox game, a fan posted online a video of the Bears, the various Bears that went to the game. It was the offensive line and Mitch, essentially, that were in the suite or whatever where the guests of the team or the White Sox were at. And Mitch Trubisky showed Aaron Rodgers a thing or two about how to chug a beer. For those of you who don't know the context of that story, I believe it was last week. David Bakhtiari, the offensive tackle for the Packers, was at the Milwaukee Bucks Toronto Raptors game last week, and when the camera got on him, slammed down 2 beers. I mean, just opened up his gullet and they went down the hatch. Then he points across the court to Aaron Rodgers, who picks up his beer and kind of slowly sips it down. He didn't chug it down. Like, Bakhtiari was basically just pouring it down this huge hole in his neck, and Rodgers was actually trying to drink it. So that didn't go well for Aaron Rodgers. I saw a video of Matt Stafford showing Rodgers how it's done, and now Mitch Trubisky, of all people, slamming down a beer, chugging it down like a man out there, even though I don't drink beer. It tastes like piss as far as I'm concerned. But chugging it down like a man, showing Aaron how it gets done. And so there you go. There's something else that Mitch is better at than Aaron Rodgers is. Hopefully that will translate onto the field week 1 when Mitch shows Aaron who the top quarterback in the NFC North is now. And then finally, probably the coolest thing that happened this week, Nike released a commercial that featured 3 players, the first of which being Odell Beckham Jr. In his new Cleveland Brown uniform. We got Saquon Barkley doing like a little Spider-Man routine around New York City. And then finally, we fade into the Bears locker room, which had actual bears in it. And then one of those bears morphs into Khalil Mack, who is in his Bear uniform and runs headlong into a wall that, of course, breaks into a million pieces as he pours through it. Now, sounds simple enough. Go ahead and watch it and tell me that you weren't completely jacked after you saw that. You're ready for football to get started. So very cool commercial. Very cool to see one of our own in that. And essentially, he was the main event of the commercial. So how awesome was that? So that's going to do it for the news and notes. I'm going to go ahead and step aside and let's get this thing kicked off. Our opponent previews. First, number 1 out of 14, starting with our same place opponents and the defending NFC South champion, New Orleans Saints, with my new friend, Ross Jackson from the Locked On Saints podcast. Kicking off our opponent preview series for the 2019 season, we start with our same place opponents, and for the first time in a long time, our beloved Chicago Bears did not finish in last place, so we're talking with first place teams this year. And to help us kick off the whole shebang here with the New Orleans Saints, from the Locked On Saints podcast, Ross Jackson. Ross, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, man. Really looking forward to doing this with you, man. Very excited to be here.
And Ross apparently is a globetrotter. Can't pin the man down into one place. He's out and about in Los Angeles right now, so that's what the background noise is for anyone who wonders what's going on there. But so Ross, you're new to the show. You're one of our new friends now, and the same questions I ask everybody when they come on the show is well, we already know where you are. You're in Los Angeles. Where are you from?
I'll give you a little bit more detail, though.
Right.
I'll give you a little more detail about why I'm out here.
Okay, but well, that's the thing. And the reason that I ask is that when I started having guests on the show to represent the various opponents that the Bears have played since 2015 when I started this, you are the rule, not the exception, as far as you living someplace outside of the market your team actually belongs to. So you're the rule, not the exception. It's an oddity to actually talk to somebody that's in the market of the team that they, quote unquote, represent. So,
right.
So we know you're in LA, but where are you from originally? And do you have a favorite Saints moment that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, man, that's great. Yeah, so I'm out here in Los Angeles right now. I actually live in between, so I bounce back and forth. I'm originally from New Orleans, so that's the other, place and everything. So I'm born and raised in New Orleans, Big Easy, all that good stuff. I'm out here in LA right now because I work with live events as, part of the other job.
Okay.
And so I was actually at Disneyland in Anaheim, floor managing the big media grand opening for the new Star Wars.
For the Star Wars, nice.
Yeah. So that's why I'm out here right now. And I love sharing it because I know a lot of people are excited about it and everything like that. And I just want to confirm for everybody that I talk to, it is as dope as you expect it to be. That's all I'm going to say.
Very nice. Very nice.
And then probably my favorite Saints moment, man, I know it's a little bit cliche, but, this franchise has only gotten, been to the Super Bowl once, won the Super Bowl, and the big game-changing play there, of course, was Tracy Porter's pick six, and I love everything about it from pre-snap when Jonathan Vilma made the adjustments that got Tracy Porter in position to jump the route, and then, of course, all the way through, the pick, pointing to the end zone, celebrating in Miami, party with the Lombardi, all that good stuff, man. I gotta give it to that. Between that and Garrett Hartley's various successful field goals to get them in and through the Super Bowl as well.
Okay. I don't actually consider that to be the low-hanging fruit. I would more think the low-hanging fruit in Saints moments would be the block punt in the first game in the Dome after Katrina. So
yeah. And don't get me wrong, that reignited the entire fan base, and it was a beautiful moment, an incredible moment for the franchise and for the city. But really, the culmination of that started that process over the next 3 years that, all culminated in that Super Bowl win.
Yeah, because that was year one of Peyton, year one of Drew Brees in New Orleans and everything. So it really was the start of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, when you look at that pick six, man, that just caps off those sort of 3 years of buildup, all of a sudden going from pretender to contender so quickly.
Yeah.
Getting guys like Reggie Bush, of course, being drafted in 2006 as well, who was going to be the savior up until Drew Brees was signed. So, it was huge. It was huge.
Yeah. I remember that being a very odd off season, pretty much all around, because the Bears in 2005 had their first successful season in a long time, but we really needed some help, and we spent all of our money on defense. We spent all but one draft pick on defensive picks. Like, we had the number one defense last year. Why are we doubling down on defense when we need offensive weapons? But what the hell do I know? We made the Super Bowl in 2006. So, but the same thing with the Saints having the number 2 pick going into that draft, everyone's thinking, okay, Leinert's going to be the pick. He's going to be the pick. Then you sign Breeze, which opens the door to, okay, well, then it's definitely going to be Mario Williams, because Reggie Bush is going number 1. And then, like 2 nights before the draft, oh, wait, Mario Williams has already signed a deal with the Texans. So now the Saints are going to have to take Reggie Bush, and Sean Payton is drooling over his Reggie Bush, Deuce McAllister backfield that he can work with now. So, yeah, it's that was a very odd offseason and culminated with us meeting in that NFC title game that led the Bears to the Super Bowl with an unfortunate ending there. But 3 years later, you guys managed to go to the same place in Miami against the same team, oddly enough,
right.
the Colts.
Yeah,
but you guys
true.
came out on top, and Tracy Porter, I remember that moment. And, of course, Tracy Porter had a very small career renaissance in Chicago.
That's true.
Before finally calling it quits. So we've talked about what, favorite Saints moments. How about we talk about probably what your least favorite Saints moment would be, thanks to recent events. I seem to remember something possibly happening in the NFC Championship game that Saints fans are a little bit peeved about. Would you like to explain that to us? I mean, for those of us who have been living under a rock for the last 6 months.
I simply have no idea what you're referring to. No, man. Yeah, of course. NFC Championship game against the Los Angeles Rams, 1 game away from the Super Bowl. Saints are in good position to close out the game.
Yeah.
Need to pick up a first down, run the clock down a little bit, kick a field goal, potentially put yourself in the position to win that game. And, of course, any number of things could have happened. The Rams could have blocked said field goal, yada, yada. You could look at all of it. But, they were in at least a higher percentage chance of being able to walk away with a win in that game. And then, you get the swing pass out to the target was Tommy Lee Lewis. Roby Coleman comes in, makes majorly early contact, to which he owned up to at the end of the game, saying, I was beat. So I was trying to make a play so that I didn't get, if I didn't get to him, that was a touchdown. And that's just, somebody playing smart, took a chance. And I guess it worked out because Bill Vinovich and the rest of his crew just kind of stood around and looked at one another like, y'all know who's coming over for dinner tonight? And then just completely missed everything going on. And there's the whole shebang that came out around it and everything. Of course, no penalty called there. It was a clear pass interference penalty.
Right.
Saints go on, they kick the field goal, then the defense couldn't make the stop. The game gets tied up on a long field goal by Greg the Leg. And then into overtime, Saints get the opportunity to, they get the ball first. All they got to do is score a touchdown. All, quote unquote, they got to do is score a touchdown. Doesn't work out. Drew Brees gets pressured, throws the ball up. John Johnson with the interception, and then defense can't hold again. And then long field goal, and the Rams head to the Super Bowl to, put up a whopping 3 points. And participate in one of the most boring Super Bowls we've ever seen. It's just not really the way that you wanted to see the year end, especially with the way that the year ended the year before.
Oh, God.
In the divisional round, with the Minneapolis Miracle. Yeah, and so not really the way you want to go about that, but it's just one of those things, man. It's tough. Like you had 2012, the suspension year with Bountygate. Right. 2013, not a great year. Then they a great year by the team, but then they get bounced in the playoffs. Then you got 2014, 15, and 16, all back-to-back 7 and 9 years with historically terrible defenses. Yeah. Then all of a sudden you get this competitive team. 2017 wiped out by a miracle. 2018 wiped out by a no call. So, yeah, it led to a lot of frustration. It was kind of a tipping point for a lot of the Who Dat Nation, especially because this was something that was completely out of everyone's control.
Yeah.
And, you can go either way with that, right? You can either say it's better that it's out of their control because they're focused on fixing what they can control, and you can sort of, put up some blinders towards what you can't and focus on what you can. A little bit of the Zion Williamson mentality, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but it was one of those things that sort of like brought everybody to a head across the fan base. You saw, the Super Bowl, Super Bowl boycotts in New Orleans. You saw, Mardi Gras was a big, Mardi Gras is built on satire, built on parody. And so there was a lot of representation of the no call there. You saw, Cam Jordan showing up to the Pro Bowl wearing a shirt that says blow whistles, not games. So, it's a lot. People were very vocal about it within the organization. New owner Gail Benson, after the passing of her late husband Tom Benson, who's been essentially the patriarch of the New Orleans Saints for quite some time.
Yeah.
And so she was very vocal about it, and she's really done an amazing job as a new owner, both of the New Orleans Saints and of the New Orleans Pelicans. And so done a great job with them. And so you saw her become more vocal about it. You saw the players become vocal about it. Michael Thomas always takes to Twitter, but Michael Thomas taking to Twitter to tweet out the rule and the rule book that says that, you can replay a game and all this other stuff. And really just yesterday on the 30th, some more fans took this whole thing to court about trying to get a reversal of the game. So, people are still mad. People are still upset about it. But the franchise itself, the organization, and the players, they're moving forward. Most of us are moving forward because it's really the only option that you have. You got two teams that you felt like were Super Bowl rosters back-to-back seasons that got bounced by a pair of miracles, essentially, or a miracle and a no-call. You got to imagine 2019, they've done some things in the offseason to really help improve certain parts of the offense, improve certain parts of the defense. And then, you got to hope that Super Bowl roster maintains in 2019. And you got to sit there and say, you know what? This can only happen so much.
Yeah, you got to figure that the bad luck is going to run out eventually, or try to figure out who on the roster, let a black cat walk in front of them, or who opened an umbrella indoors or something like that. That's going to curse the franchise, because the Minneapolis Miracle was one thing. I mean, talk about a freak moment and the way that all went down, and Stephon Diggs manages to stay in bounds, and that rookie safety whose name I'm forgetting at the moment.
Marcus Williams.
There you go. Has anybody ever asked him what he was doing on that particular? Because it looked like he was trying to avoid Diggs, or did anybody ever ask him what it was he was trying to do on that play? Because I never found out.
It's kind of ironic in hindsight when you take into account what happened with the Saints in 2018. But his thing was, I was trying to avoid making contact too early. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's funny.
So, he was trying to make the smart play, quote unquote, and then ended up, coming in a little bit more ginger than you'd like to see, and ended up missing the tackle and whiffing on it, just trying not to make contact too early.
And took out his teammate at the same time.
Yes, exactly. I think it was Ken Crawley that was trailing back there with him. And so when you look at that, and then you look at 2018 and the way that everything went down for Nicole Roby-Coleman, you kind of go, hell, you should have just hit him. You should have took him out early.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. And then, of course, like you said, the no call, and I had a lot of feelings about that. I mean, in the moment, I was a Saints fan because I actually wanted to see the Saints play the Patriots. I thought they were the better matchup, and it turns out I was probably right about that. But considering how the Rams ended up playing, but the immediate fallout was I can't believe they didn't call that. The Saints did get screwed. But we have overtime, so we'll see what happens, that kind of thing. It didn't work out. The Rams end up going. I'm not happy about it, and more so because of how the Bears' season ended.
Right.
With the blocked field goal. If we make that field goal, we go to the Rams, and there's no way. I don't see the Rams beating the Bears. I don't.
No.
So it's like here I am watching the Rams skate by. Like they lucked out in not having to play us in the divisional round and smoke the Cowboys. Then they come into this NFC Championship game, and give them credit where credit's due. They were behind and they came back and made it a game.
Yep.
They came back, but they get this miracle of a no call that opens the door for them to be able to win. Now they're in the Super Bowl, and they lay one of the biggest eggs ever, scoring 3 points by one of the most prolific offenses to ever play in a Super Bowl. So it's like it was all very bitter for me to see it happen the way it did. But I kind of got exhausted, probably obviously not as quickly as most Saint fan did, but kind of got exhausted in the 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl with lawsuits and replay the game and all that kind of stuff. And I get it. I completely get it. You guys got screwed. It sucks, and there's nothing that's going to fix that other than either the miracle of them reversing it or 2019 finally coming around so you can fix it. So, there's like I feel a lot of different ways about it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that made this thing really swell to the just almost unbearable place that it got to is because, administration in terms of the organization of the NFL was silent for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
never addressing anything, never really talking about it. They called Sean Payton after the game and said, "That's on us. We missed that call." But we heard that from Sean Payton, and that was it. Yeah. Nothing from Goodell until, I think it was around Pro Bowl time when we finally heard something from him. And so I think that was a big part of it, too. Because, something like that happens, and then you come forward and you say, look, we can't replay the game. There are stipulations that don't allow for you to do that. And the only circumstance in which it's okay is if you can find foul play, right? So if you can say, yes, Bill Vinovich didn't make that call and his crew didn't make that call because, they put money on the LA Rams or whatever, you have to have something that blatantly that shows, forgive me for using what is right now a hot button word in the political sphere, but you have to find some type of obstruction. You know what I mean? But there was nothing like that. And had they just come out and said that at the very beginning, it said, look, there's no chance that any of this stuff is happening. There's no proof that there was any kind of tampering or anything like that. So there's nothing that we can do. Yes, we missed the call. The officials missed the call. We'll handle that, and we'll handle that officiating crew. But as far as us moving forward, we'll see the Rams and the Patriots in the Super Bowl in 2 weeks. Period. Right. Done. If they would have just done that, I don't think that things would have swelled as much as they did. Not to put the fault on anybody else, but I just wonder how much different the situation would have been had there been some acknowledgement and a little bit of accountability right after the fact.
I definitely agree with that. I mean, and you bring up an excellent point with that how silent the commissioner and the league in general were. I mean, we didn't really need to hear from the commissioner, but to hear from the NFL in general, like some kind of a statement along the lines of what you said, probably could have quieted it down a bit in the chaos between the title game and the Super Bowl that maybe would have eased the tension a bit. But you're right, they didn't say anything.
It was just all quiet on the home front.
It really was. So yeah, what a bummer. And then the Super Bowl being what it was, and it's like I have mixed feelings about the Super Bowl as well. Number one, I have the bitterness of thinking that I thought the Bears would have had a shot at it. I thought that Bears-Saints NFC title game was the floor for the Bears, not the ceiling. I really thought that was the worst we could do, and then the Philly game happened, so I had some feelings about that. And then, so it's like I had a like I said, very bittersweet because I know that Belichick modeled what he did, and even though he's a brilliant coach and didn't need our help, but he modeled what he did to the Rams based on what the Bears did to the Rams on Sunday Night Football.
Early this season.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that he took what they did and used his own personnel to do something very similar and shut them down. So there's the sweet part, but the bitter is it wasn't us doing it, kind of thing. So,
right.
But we move into the off season, and one of the things that's I guess a negative aspect of success is that other people around this copycat league want a piece of it. So they go in, they try to take some pieces from yours. They didn't get scalped quite as much as, say, the Rams did. Anyone that's even remotely associated with Sean McVay has a head coaching job now. So, I mean, the coaching staff got picked apart. But you did lose some key guys. Alex Okafor heads to Kansas City. Mark Ingram, who had a slight flirtation with the Bears, ends up with the Ravens. Ben Watson retires, then unretires, then signs with the Saints. With the Patriots. And then Tommy Lee Lewis, I don't know if he just wanted to get the hell out of New Orleans or what the situation was there, but he's in the NFC North, and he'll be facing my Bears twice a year playing for the Detroit Lions. So which one of those guys, or, can you tell me what you're going to miss about the guys that we've talked about?
Well, I'll tell you what, Tommy Lee Lewis, first of all, everyone's going to miss the jokes. Everyone's going to miss the memes. I think that's going to be the biggest part of Tommy Lee Lewis being gone. I certainly won't miss his 6.7 yards per kick return Certainly
wow.
won't be missing that, or
Okay.
per punt
Yeah.
return rather. Definitely won't be missing that. Saints really putting a lot of emphasis in the return game and perfecting, or really starting to improve the return game and special teams. So that's actually something that is kind of a plus with Tommy Lee Lewis being there, because he was kind of one of those guys who was a training camp darling every year. But then once it got into, out of the exhibition season, all of a sudden he was just Tommy Lee Lewis. He wasn't the big returner that they expected out of them. So that's something that actually comes positive from his loss. But some of the big things, when you look at Mark Ingram, of course, you got to talk about the camaraderie between Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, the culture of the team, which has become more of a popular thing within the last, I'd say, probably about 5 years of the NFL, is fans really paying attention to team culture.
Yeah.
And when you have a team like the New Orleans Saints, and the Chicago Bears as well, Chicago Bears are also an excellent example of team culture. Like Club Dub, everything like that, right? So you have you have this big emphasis on culture in the NFL now, and Mark Ingram was such a staple of that for the New Orleans Saints. And so losing out on him, I'm not really all that concerned about the loss of on-field production, because again, he was out for a third of last season, or rather a quarter of last season, missing 4 games early with the PED suspension. And during that time, Alvin Kamara really got the load of that work, and then put up excellent numbers over those first 4 games, and just looked like the guy that it looked like the next step from 2017, his rookie of the year season. And he really continued that throughout the rest of 2018, even after Mark Ingram returned. And so you don't really miss the on-field production, and especially signing somebody that has around the same skill set, just better size and better speed in Latavius Murray.
Yeah.
He's a pretty good replacement. But the culture conversation and the community conversation is a big part of what you miss with Mark Ingram. You can actually kind of say a little bit of the same thing for Alex Okafor. Alex Okafor was a veteran leader presence on that defensive line alongside Cameron Jordan, especially with a young guy like Marcus Davenport coming in, and a pair of other young guys on the interior, and Sheldon Rankins, who of course is going to miss the beginning portion, probably the first half of next season, when he took, because of the Achilles tear that he suffered in the divisional game against the Eagles. And then you have David Onyemata, who was drafted the same year as him. So you've got some young guys over there on the defensive line, and Alex Okafor was a rotational, good veteran presence that was there for them. And so you miss that leadership, and you miss his production. I mean, as a rotational guy coming in and getting at least four sacks in the last pair of seasons where he was playing with the Saints, that's not blowing anybody out of the water, but also he wasn't a starter. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He was coming in and he was playing a relief rotational role with some, developing guys like Trey Hendrickson and like Marcus Davenport. And so you miss him a little bit because of that rotational effectiveness, and also his positional versatility. He was a really great guy to throw into defensive interior and NASCAR packages and things like that. Or you put him out on the outside and have Cameron Jordan take that sort of defensive interior NASCAR package type of role. And so, you're going to miss that versatility. So it's not just about sacks. It's not just about tackles, even though he was really, really good against the run, much like Marcus Davenport. It's a little bit of the sort of the wrinkles that you can create with the personnel because of the freedom and the versatility that Alex Okafor brought to that defensive line. So you're going to miss those things. Benjamin Watson retiring, coming out of retirement, going to the Patriots. Glad to see him go back to the Patriots, where it all began for him. You got to love that. But another cultural guy, another cultural leader guy that's coming through, and that is going to be missed this season. And so he's one of those guys that he didn't produce an entirely too much last season. He was a nice option in rotation with Dan Arnold and Josh Hill, but that's really the most of what he was. He's an outstanding blocker for a tight end as well, which the Saints have become to emphasize a little bit more since Jimmy Graham was traded away in 2015. And so really you kind of miss the culture with him. You miss his flexibility and what he can do for you, running seam routes, running wheel routes, and also being a part of that inline blocker as a tight end as well. So those are some of the big things that you miss, but you've got a great replacement in Jared Cook, and so there's a lot of reasons to be excited, even despite those losses, with the additions that the Saints have made over the offseason. Lots of reasons to be excited about what this team has in store.
Right. So we replaced Jared Cook with, we replaced Ben Watson with Jared Cook. That's probably an upgrade across the board.
Right.
Younger guy, more athletic, going to be more part of the offense than Ben Watson was. Latavius Murray, a bigger, faster version of Ingram. But what I also see in the big signings that you had is that there was a lot of focus on the middle of the line on both sides. You got Nick Easton, the center, Marshall Newhouse, and Ryan Groy, interior offensive lineman. You drafted Eric McCoy in the second round of the draft, the center out of Texas A&M. And on the defensive side, Malcolm Brown and Mario Edwards, defensive tackles in that 4-3 that the Saints play. So was this something that was really plaguing the Saints, that interior offensive line last year?
Oh, interior offensive line for sure. You saw it start week 13 against the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. That was a big sort of, that's kind of the exposure, right? You were talking about the blueprint that was created by the Bears for the Patriots to use against the Rams.
Right.
Dallas essentially is credited with creating the blueprint that caused the Saints a lot of trouble toward the end of their season. Now, of course, week 13 they lost, and they didn't lose again until week 17, and that came after a 10-game win streak after losing the opening game. So, they didn't really put too much out there to create a lot of concern. However, it was enough to, look at it and say, okay, we got to address that, because the injuries along the offensive line created a bit of a ripple effect. You look at basically Teron Armstead gets injured. The only other guy that you really trust at left tackle is Andrus Peat, who plays left guard. You move him out to left guard. Jamon Bushrod was already injured and out. And so they ended up having to sort of plug in these reserves. You saw some Derek Newton. You saw some Will Clapp, 7th-round rookie out of 2017 or 2018 draft, rather. And so, that created a lot of trouble for Drew Brees toward the end of the season, and really kind of through the playoffs. And so that kind of plagued them a little bit. And from the very beginning, Sean Payton was not at all coy about the decision to really work on the offensive line, and particularly the interior, because one of the things that he said, starting from the combine on, talking about how they need to improve and shore up that interior offensive line. And so you saw them do that, trading up from 62 up to 48 to snatch Eric McCoy, who played 1,441 pass blocking snaps in college at Texas A&M and only allowed one sack in his entire career there. So you look at that, you look at his speed as well. I think he was the fastest guy in the draft, over 300 pounds outside of Chris Lindstrom, if I remember correctly, or outside of he was the second fastest. And so, you look at that type of versatility, and you look at the versatility of the running backs. Alvin Kamara, somebody that can play as a receiver, but then also affect the game as a running back inside and outside. You need versatile, mobile offensive linemen to sort of become those lead blockers on pulls, on outside zone runs, and things like that. So you look for that kind of quality in players, and they found that in Eric McCoy. Same thing going on with the defensive interior. Big emphasis there. You have Sheldon Rankins, who I mentioned earlier, is going to be missing at least half the season with that Achilles tear. So Malcolm Brown is an excellent selection for them in terms of the nose tackle role. Mario Edwards is a great selection for them in terms of the 3-tech nose tackle. I was talking about Alex Okafor's versatility. You kind of see that in Mario Edwards, too, who's played all along the defensive line. And so you see them trying to shore that up, too, because we don't know what's going to go on with David Onyemata, who had an off-season marijuana possession charge, and if that's going to result in a suspension. So far, no one in the organization has been notified by the league that will be as such, but you got to prepare for that too. So you see them signing another guy like Sylvester Williams, who played nose tackle for the Denver Broncos 2015, won a Super Bowl with them. You saw them sign Kenny Bigelow out of West Virginia, undrafted free agent. So you see them really trying a lot of guys, Shy Tuttle as well. You see them really bringing in a lot of defensive interior guys to try to shore that up as well. I love that you mentioned Ryan Groy, because he's somebody that I'm actually really, really intrigued by, because he's played every single position along the offensive line since being brought in by, is that right? He came in with the Bears?
He was an undrafted free agent for the Bears, yes.
Yeah, 2014 or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, and since then he's played every single offensive line position. So you love that versatility, and that's something that the Saints value a lot. They look at that in every position, not just offensive and defensive line, but you look at all of the other position guys and all the skill position guys that also serve well on special teams along various roles, gunners, jammers, returners, so on and so forth. And so they really value that positional versatility, or I guess they call it functional versatility in draft speed.
Right. So we talked about Eric McCoy, and frankly, man, as a former offensive lineman myself, you got to be a heck of an athlete to be a center and be able to pull at the same time. It is not an easy thing to do, to snap the ball from under center and then get out in front of the running back, especially at the NFL level, especially with him in the SEC with the athletes that they have playing down there, and the speed that you mentioned says a lot about what he brings to the table for the Saints if he ends up being the starter. For you guys, is that what
right.
he's in line for, or is Easton going to be the center, or is he coming in to be an interior guy at one of the guard spots?
I would say that all intents and purposes are to try to get Eric McCoy studied up as quickly as possible. Of course, I mean, everybody by now has seen the Saints offensive play calls and how they call two plays in every, they call their primary play and a kill play in the huddle. And those are, somewhere between 7 to 10 words a piece. In those plays. So it's a big playbook to learn. It's a lot to learn. So they're working on getting his communication up. He's been taking mostly second team reps in OTAs so far, though yesterday and the day that was open to media, we did see him take some first team snaps, but mostly it's been Nick Easton and actually undrafted free agent Cameron Tom from a couple of years back. He came in 2016, if I remember correctly, out of Southern Mississippi. And so he's somebody that's also been getting some first team reps while Nick Easton has been playing at right guard, because Larry Warford, starting right guard for the Saints, has been dealing with rehabilitating an undisclosed injury, which Sean Payton talking about undisclosed injury, what's the phrase? Name a more iconic duo. Like, that's just a thing for him.
Right.
So we'll see what it is that actually happens with that. But there are actually 3 people right now that are rotating at that starting center position, and I think they feel good about everybody that they've got. But I think all intents and purposes are to get Eric McCoy studded up as quickly as possible. I could see him being a week 1 starter, if not certainly by some time within the season. I could see him moving into the starting position, especially with it's unfortunate. You have a lot of talent on that offensive line over on the left side with Teron Armstead and with Andrus Peat. But unfortunately, the culture has sort of become a when as opposed to if they're going to get injured type question. And so once that starts to happen, then we'll see what happens to move everybody around. But thankfully, they've got a lot of versatility going on. The signing of Marshall Newhouse is big because they don't really have a swing tackle, but he could be somebody that could contend for that. Saints usually look at that 6th and 7th offensive lineman almost like starters, because you have the interior swing and you have the tackle swing, or the swing tackle rather, and those guys see a lot of playing time. So they're making the moves that they need to make to get a look at some guys in OTAs right now, filling up that 90-man roster, and trying to see what's going to happen before they need to cut it down by the end of the preseason.
Well, and that's one of the things about a team that has been successful on the level that the Saints have been, a team like the Bears that has a very solidified roster, the Rams as well, is that your starting 22 are pretty much set. So the offseason is more about either tweaking something, adding depth, and adding insurance. God forbid, knock on wood, something happens to one of your starters. So, I mean, it's a very different focus that teams like the Saints, the Rams, and the Bears had this year, as opposed to a few years ago when they were struggling and they were trying to find starters and main contributors. And now it's more about finding those guys that can step up if needed, because we've got our 22 starters.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's exciting. I've mentioned on Twitter a couple of times that it's exciting to be a Saints, to be somebody covering the Saints, and also a Saints fan, born and raised, as somebody that struggled through the 2013, 14, and 15 seasons, 14, 15, and 16 seasons with those historically bad defenses. And the big concern right now is who's going to be the rotational defensive end with Marcus Davenport. That is a wonderful place to be as a fan, as somebody as a part of the Who Dat Nation, and somebody that covers the team. That's an incredible position to be in.
Absolutely, and very much the Bears are in the same spot right now. Who is going to be our nickel corner? Who is going to be, who's going to step up in this spot or that one, or who's our swing interior offensive lineman going to be, since they both got signed away in free agency? Who's that going to be, and whatnot, as opposed to, we don't have a pass rush. We don't have a quarterback. We don't have a running back. Having to fill some gigantic holes and taking a shot with somebody. You already know the answer to that question. Now it's a matter of finding somebody else who can, maybe contribute if he needs to, but mostly is going to be that guy that helps you out on special teams more than anything.
Exactly right.
So the rest of your draft, very much like the Bears, you only had 5 draft picks this year. The Saints seem to be allergic to draft picks because they just keep giving them away. You're already minus your 2020 second rounder to move up to get McCoy, and then was it didn't you package some picks to move up to get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as well?
Yeah, actually, in that trade for Eric McCoy, they also recouped a 116 overall, and then they used that as well as one of their 5th round picks to move up earlier in the 4th round. So not too terrible. Saints still have maintained most of their picks for 2020. They traded away a 7th earlier in that Teddy Bridgewater trade near the beginning of the season. And so right now they have a 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for 2020. But it's funny, like I talk to people about it a lot, and I mentioned, and the analogy that I use, or really I guess the analogy that I use is that it's like when you grow up and you do something a very particular way in your home, and you just think that that's the way that everybody does it, and then you go over to a friend's house and they do it differently, and you're like, why do you do it like that? For Saints fans, trading away future picks is just, that's what you do, right? Like the other 32 clubs don't do that, and that's kind of what it's always felt like. But I mean, being able to make a leap for a guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, going ahead and drafting him in the 4th round, 105 overall, he's turned into, and I think can be considered one of the steals of the Saints draft, because they've played him now throughout OTAs and rookie minis. They played him at nickel corner. They played him in the slot as a pass rusher. They played him on both boundaries. They played him at safety, and they as a deep ball single high safety. They've also, and he has excelled in all of those places and has really impressed secondary coach Aaron Glenn. And Aaron Glenn's one of the better secondary coaches in the league. And, he helped really turn around that secondary. And, of course, the addition of Eli Apple last year made a huge difference for the Saints secondary. But getting a guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who is somebody that looks like he's going to be able to make an impact his rookie season. He's somebody that is going to push for some playing time, especially in the nickel corner role, over P.J. Williams, who had a good year last year, but also he himself had an offseason arrest for a DUI. And then Patrick Robinson broke his ankle, which is not an easy injury to recover from. Early in the season. I think it was the 3rd week. It was against the Atlanta Falcons. And so, we don't know really how effective P-Rob is going to be. We don't know what's going to happen with P.J. Williams yet at the beginning of the season. And so Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is somebody that's going to make a big push for some potential playing time throughout this season. And I think he's going to get it because he has so far shown himself to be a really, really valuable asset, playing as a gunner as well on special teams, in addition to all of the other positions that I've just mentioned. And that's just something that the Saints have done really well. They keep finding these guys that find ways to contribute all along the roster, which we kind of already alluded to. But it was a wonderful, just a really fantastic pick to land a guy who, in a lot of mock drafts, was mocked in the 1st or 2nd round, early 2nd round. To get him at the top of the 4th round is just an excellent get for the Saints. They got 3 of their top 70 players on their big board within the first 177 picks, which is pretty good.
Yeah, the Bears also landed a guy in the 4th round from the SEC that was not supposed to be there in Riley Ridley, the wide receiver out of Georgia. He was supposed to be like a 2nd round pick that was somehow at the back of the 4th round still there for the Bears to take, and he has been a lightning rod in OTA so far. So I'm interested to see just how he's going to develop in that receiving core with the Bears as well. And like you said, you got Gardner-Johnson in the top of the 4th round, was probably going to be a late 1st, early 2nd round pick, and there he is sitting there day 3, still waiting to get his name called. Falls in your lap, and he could be another. The receiver. I'm thinking. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name.
Michael Thomas?
No.
No.
Was drafted in 2006, was a rookie when you guys made
Marcus
the run.
Colston,
there it is.
Yeah, that's the name right there.
There were only like 4 players drafted after him in the entire draft. Like, he was that close to being Mr. Irrelevant, and he ends up being a stud from start to finish in his entire
what
career.
An incredible career.
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of 7th round picks, the linebacker out of Idaho, Caden Ellis.
Yes.
This is a guy that it's hopefully maybe this is an analogy that he can live up to, but his resume kind of reminds me a little bit of a guy that we had. Maybe you've heard of him, Brian Urlacher. Where, he's one of those guys that ends up playing like a million different positions and then goes to the NFL, and it's the team that chooses him that ends up using him in the spot that will best utilize him. Like Urlacher was a kick returner. He was a safety. He, caught passes, all that kind of stuff, ends up becoming a Hall of Fame middle linebacker for the Bears. Now, obviously, Caden Ellis is a 7th round pick late in the draft, but his athleticism and the things that he did do in college, granted it was at Idaho, but it makes him one of the more interesting guys that you end up picking in the draft.
Yeah, he was my guy going into the draft. I was pounding the table for Caden Ellis to the New Orleans Saints, and I was so stoked when they grabbed him late in the draft at 244. He's somebody that, look, we can talk about all the positions that he played. He was actually on the Locked On Saints podcast on Monday's episode of this past week.
Nice.
And he's an incredible dude. Played a ton of positions. He played all four linebacker roles at Idaho. Played as an edge rusher. He played 3-tech in one game. Even as he's 6'3", 225. Played
220 at a 3-tech.
Yeah, he played. It was in the Washington State game, if I remember correctly, and he played 3-tech. He was like, that was a very interesting game, and I'm like, yeah, sure. He played some slot. He played safety for a little while. He played. He was a tight end for a few stats. I think he had, I can't remember how many catches, 10 catches, 176 yards, and 2 touchdowns, if I remember correctly, as a tight end at Idaho. And then he, in high school, played triple option quarterback on top of all of that.
Okay, so this could be your defensive Taysom Hill.
That's exactly right. That's the big comparison for him, and I think he's going to be able to live up to that. Right now, the Saints are really focusing him down at inside linebacker, playing sort of that Mike position, quarterback in the defense. He's got the smarts for it. He's got the IQ, the game IQ for it. As you can imagine, because of all the positions he's played, he better know something. And so they've got him really operating there, and he's really learning that role and getting used to checks and everything like that, and having a lot of fun. And people are excited about him. He was in coverage on Thursday's game, gave up a big catch and a big gain on a wheel route to Devine Ezigbo, one of the undrafted free agent running backs out of Nebraska. But also later on in the practice, got a sack as well, and so he's showing his potential as a pass rusher as well. And so he's a little bit more hot than he is cold, and that's that's exactly what you want to do as a 7th round pick.
You know, at 6'3", 225, he's essentially a gigantic. He's either a small linebacker or a giant defensive back. Does he have the speed to be one of those hybrid guys, like to be like a Dayon Buchanan, who could be a hybrid linebacker safety kind of thing?
Yeah, he definitely possesses the athletic profile for that. I think the Saints are going to try to keep that from happening and just try to sort of focus him down at one place for right now. But, one of the things that he mentioned that he likes so much about playing linebacker is that he gets to that it itself as a linebacker is a little bit of a hybrid role the way that he views it, because you get to do a little bit of both. You get to do the coverage job of a defensive back, but then you also get to rush the passer like a down lineman. And so he sort of sees it that way, and he's built his athletic profile throughout his career as such.
All right, so we look ahead to 2019, and we've already talked about shoring up the interior line on offense, shoring it up a bit on defense as well. What's going to happen with Rankins? How soon can he come back, and so on and so forth. What are some of the other storylines that we should be keeping an eye on when thinking about the Saints in 2019?
Certainly, Jared Cook. He's definitely turning heads so far in training camp. OTAs, I should say. And to be able to see how he's going to mesh throughout the offseason and then throughout the season, really a big deal for the Saints to have another receiving body like that, because that was such a big sort of deficiency for them in 2018, was not having a number 2 receiver. And so that's huge for them, and be able to watch how Jared Cook is going to fold into the offense. The other thing that I'd look out for is Marcus Williams, man. Marcus Williams struggled a little bit this second season, kind of had a little bit of that sophomore slump. Had as many takeaways as he had his rookie season, really eliminated the deep ball, but did a lot of those jobs that the casual viewer doesn't know is happening, right? Eliminating the deep ball, keeping passes, not being targeted, things like that. You don't really see that. You can record that now, thanks to Pro Football Focus and other analytics sites, but it's hard to really understand that as a casual viewer. And so you can see that and say, okay, yes, he served his role as a single high safety, but didn't really stand out as a playmaker. So you want to see him get a little bit more of that playmaker role that he had when he was at Utah. So he's somebody that I'm watching. The evolution of Eli Apple stepping into his second season. And then the other thing that I'm watching, of course, and it feels like this is an every year thing, is Drew Brees. Drew Brees is going to be, by the end of this season, 41 years old. I mean, we saw Tom Brady just win a Super Bowl at 41, but, he's got Bill Belichick. Drew Brees has Sean Payton. So, you can have those pretty high expectations of him, but you can sort of see a little bit of that arm not being very spring chicken-like toward the end of the season. Last season, and so you kind of wonder in 2019 if he's going to see that, if you're going to see that same kind of regression throughout the season. But with having an added weapon like Jared Cook that can be a little bit more of a body over the middle, a little bit more of a safety valve, it'll hopefully help him not take as much of a beating, even if the offensive line gets hampered a little bit, and also just keeps him from having to kind of gun so much, which we saw a little bit more toward the end of the season when they were trying to fight their way out of leads and things like that, or fight their way back into leads and things like that.
Sure.
So definitely Drew Brees is one that I would keep an eye out on. And then, of course, throughout the preseason, you're going to be watching Teddy Bridgewater, who's expected to become Drew Brees' successor after the season, if Drew Brees indeed does retire after 2019.
Right, and that was something that I realized just yesterday when I was looking at it, is that after 2019 concludes, you don't have a quarterback on your roster.
That's right.
Drew Brees is at the end of his contract. Taysom Hill's at the end of his. Teddy Bridgewater's at the end of his. The 2019 season is very important in where the Saints are going to decide where they go for 2020.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The idea with putting Teddy Bridgewater on a 1-year contract is that, you know, they're going to want to sign him to starter money if he becomes the guy in 2020. And so they put him on a 1-year contract for this year so that if Drew Brees does retire, then the hope is that they'll be able to re-sign him and get him into that starter, you know, that mid-range starter role, that the Case Keenum-esque area
Sure.
of contracts. 15 to 20, somewhere around there, maybe a little bit less. But, you know, to kind of re-sign him to that place. And then Taysom Hill talked just a couple of days ago about his goal is to become Drew Brees' successor. As of right now, his big concern is winning the Super Bowl and doing whatever it is that he has to do with him alongside Drew Brees. But his goal is to become the successor for Drew Brees. And, you know, Taysom Hill, only a couple of seasons in the league, but of course he took time off after BYU to go and do his mission.
Sure.
And so he's a little bit of an older quarterback as well, not super old, but, you know, he's pushing 30. And so he's sort of got a little bit of time. You've seen him lose some time already. And so it makes sense for him that he would want to start to push to become that next guy in New Orleans as much as he can. So it'll definitely be intriguing to see what happens with the quarterback situation after 2019. And of course, if Drew Brees does stay, then the Saints end up getting a little bit of a pickle because they already owe him $15 million next season, whether he retires, stays, goes or not, regardless. And then they've also got all these other guys, Michael Thomas, Cameron Jordan, are due for extensions.
Yeah.
Marshawn Lattimore is going to be going into his 5th-year option, as is starting right tackle Ryan Ramczyk. Eli Apple didn't take his 5th-year option with the intent of re-signing him to a longer-term contract potentially after this season. So there's a lot of people that they'll need to re-sign if they want to continue to stay competitive. And if Drew Brees comes back, then you really need to figure out how to balance the books and make that happen.
Yeah, that's what's coming for the Bears as well. Eddie Jackson's going to be up for a contract. Mitch Trubisky's coming up. Leonard Floyd. Guys like that, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a few people that are probably going to be wanting to ante up, for the Bears to step up to the table and pay them. And, like I said, when you're a victim of your own success, these are the kind of problems that you have.
That's right.
But these are the fun problems to have. How are we going to figure out how to keep somebody as opposed to how are we going to put together a team that's worthy of the field?
Exactly
kind of
right.
thing. So it's these are the good problems. This is the good stress to have when you're a fan of an NFL franchise. So real quick before we let you go, we'll take a look at the schedule here. And the first thing that steps out to me is the first 4 games of the season are against playoff teams.
Yeah.
You got the Texans week 1 at home on Monday night. You're at the Rams, which is a game I'm sure you're looking forward to.
Oh, yes.
And after listening to you and Brad on the crossover episode today, did you talk about anything other than week 2? Because I don't think I remember hearing anything much about you guys making predictions on the score in May. That's how much this game means to you guys. You're already calling the scores before we even got to training camp. Week 2, bro, we're taking you down.
We don't even have a roster yet.
Yeah, we don't even have a 53-man roster, and we're probably trying to still figure out who our 90-man roster is right now.
Right.
We don't have a 53-man, but we're kicking your ass 23-21. Week 2, bro, you're going down. Kind of thing.
I love it.
Yeah. Then you're at the Seahawks, always a tough game, and then home on Sunday night against the Cowboys. So those first 4 games, there's no easing into 2019 for the Saints. You guys got to come out guns blazing because you're playing some of the best that 2018 has to offer.
That's absolutely right. And with the team over the last 5 years, with the exception of last year, so it could be that the trend is changing a little bit, but they're not. The Saints have not been a very successful team in September. They lost something like 13 straight in September before they finally won a few games in September last season. So you kind of want to see them be able to come out and start off hot and then be able to. And then the tricky part is that if you start off hot, how do you maintain it throughout the rest of the season? Right. Especially, I don't want to bury the lead here, but there are some more very entertaining games throughout this season, and there's a couple of other tough stretches throughout the season as well for the Saints. So they've got to be able to start off hot and then maintain throughout the 16 games. Yeah,
so after the Cowboys in week 4, you got the Bucks, you got the Jags, then that team in Chicago. I don't remember what they're called. But you're on the road for the Bears. I think that would be far more significant if the game was in December 20th as opposed to October 20th. So October, Chicago in October is absolutely beautiful. So the weather won't be a factor unless it's raining or something like that, with the wonderful footing that we have in Soldier Field. But then you got the Cardinals, that Week 9 bye, right dead center in the middle of the season. And then I think the other tough stretch you might be talking about is like after the bye, 4 straight division games, including that very fun Thanksgiving stretch where you play 3 games in 11 days. So
that's it.
You start with the Falcons week 10 after the bye. You're at the Bucks, home for the Panthers, and then 72 hours later, you're playing the Falcons on Thanksgiving night.
Yeah, and in Atlanta at that this time around.
Yeah.
So it's nice. I mean, I like the tradition. I like the new Thanksgiving tradition that Saints fans are getting to enjoy, some roasted turkey and roasted falcon on Thanksgiving. But I don't know. This one might be a little tough. I can see the Saints definitely splitting that series this season, having that holiday primetime game in Atlanta is a little tough, but Drew Brees has played 7 primetime games throughout his career, over 55 touchdowns, over 5,000 yards in those, and still single-digit interceptions in primetime games. So he's somebody that's always been able to light up the scoreboard in primetime. So you kind of hope that magic continues through his 19th season, which is kind of ridiculous, let me say incredible. And so, that stretch, exactly. And so that stretch is a little tough coming back. And then, but the good news is that by week 13, there's potential that the Saints can have their division wrapped up if they play really well throughout there, and then they don't see another divisional game until week 17, which could be completely meaningless if the playoffs, if they've already got seeding settled. So it could be good, could be bad, but it's definitely a tough stretch, and they're going to want to be prepared for it. And so that's part of that, extending the longevity. Sean Payton over the last few years has been really good off of bye weeks. Ever since he really sat down and talked to Bill Parcells, he got some great advice about how to utilize the bye week and how to work off of that. And, the difference between letting your team relax and then letting your team get rest, 2 different things there. And so he's done a really good job off the bye week. So in a way that 4-game stretch of divisional games is in a nice spot because it's off the bye week, but it's so late in the season that you just got to cross your fingers and hope that the longevity is there. Yeah. I mean, it's because of the NFC South, or at least last year anyway, it was not a good year for the NFC South in general. Not like in 2017 where 3 teams made the playoffs and things like that. Last year it was the Saints and then everybody else as far as the division was concerned. The Panthers, such a schizophrenic team, man. Absolutely.
15-1 in 2015. They crapped the bed in 2016. They make the playoffs 2017. Last year they start 6-2 and then lose 7 games straight and everything. I can't figure the Panthers out for the life of me. The Falcons.
I don't think Ron Rivera can either.
Yeah, and it might end up costing him his job if it doesn't happen again this year.
Right.
And then the Falcons, I think, were just the victim to the Super Bowl loser curse.
And some really major injuries on the defensive side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Major injuries.
Yeah, they were pulling guys off the street by the end of the year in Atlanta. It was kind of messed up. And then, of course, the Buccaneers are the Buccaneers, but they might actually be something because they got themselves a real coach now. With Arians and such, so that things might be changing. I mean, and also the NFC South is one of the more schizophrenic divisions of the whole. Worst to first thing was like the first 8 years or something that the division existed in 2002 and everything. So it's always kind of crazy. And quite frankly, it's the NFC, so anything can happen in the NFC.
That's true.
It's the AFC that you can read like a book. It's like, here it comes. It's Patriots, Steelers, Broncos. It's going to be one of them. And, every now and then the Chiefs will pop up. Maybe the Colts will do something. But you can pretty much guarantee it's going to be Pittsburgh or New England and then everybody else trying to trail in behind them. In the NFC, it is a revolving door. It's one team this year. It's another team the year after that. There's always somebody reemerging in the NFC, which is what makes it so exciting and frustrating all at the same time because nobody can have that sustained success to always be in the conversation because the conversation changes every single year.
Right. Absolutely, man. Yeah, I think the Super Bowl matchup odds came out not too long ago, and on the AFC side, there were only 3 teams that were named there. I think it was the Steelers, the Patriots, and the Browns, of course, now with trending upwards. And then over on the NFC side, I think it was 5 different teams in just the first top 10. of the of the Super Bowl matchup odds. So it's exactly there, man. The parity in the NFC is way, way more than that of the AFC.
Yeah, I really wish the AFC could figure that out because it's super boring seeing the Patriots make it to the Super Bowl every season.
Yeah.
Not to mention annoying because I will go to my grave saying Tom Brady's not the greatest quarterback of all time. And every time the guy wins another ring, I lose the argument worse. So what are you going to do?
I think you and a lot of Saints fans would agree right there.
Right. Exactly. I definitely think Breeze is a better quarterback than Brady. But, he has Belichick and 6 rings to offset what I think. So, but anyway, it's I'm looking forward to this year. I'm looking forward to that matchup week 7. Oddly, both the Rams game and the Bears game, number one, are on the road for you guys, so that sucks. Mm-hmm. And neither of those games is national television.
Yeah, interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean when the Bears and the Rams play, that's Sunday Night Football. But with the Rams and the Saints week 2, at best you're looking at that game of the week on Fox, and I think it's the same thing for the Bears. I don't think that's a noon game for the Bears in Chicago. So I think you're getting that it's like almost like a soft national platform where you're being shown in most of the country, just not all of it. And it's odd that with where those 3 teams played, and they just so happen to be playing each other again this year, that those weren't national TV games. Those weren't Sunday nights or even Thursday night or Monday night football games. They ended up being the late game on week 7 and week 2 for the Saints. I thought that was kind of odd when I saw that on the schedule.
Yeah, same. And I expected to see maybe some primetime games there, as you're alluding to, and then also Brad and I talked about it with that Saints and Rams game. Why not week 1?
Yeah, Monday Night Football.
Especially understanding. I mean, and the Saints get the first Monday Night Football game of the year, but it's against the Texans, and no disrespect toward the Texans, but the storyline, it really lends itself to it being Saints and Rams to open the season, and even having Saints and Bears toward the a little bit more into that December, more iconic Soldier Field type play. But I'm not complaining that that's not the case. But you sort of come to expect those kinds of things. But of course, they had it different this year. They did all the automatic algorithms and everything to create some hundred, however tens of thousands of different types of schedules, and then selected one and everything. And so it was kind of a roll of the dice in a way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't envy anyone who has to try to put one of those schedules together. Like when I was a kid in middle school, I created my own football league, and me, with no logistics to have to think of, trying to put together a schedule for a 32-team football league was impossible. I would drive myself nuts because I kept repeating things. It was just the bananas. And somebody who has to take into effect that, hey, Bruce Springsteen is playing Soldier Field in October, so the Bears can't play there the night after that concert because the field's going to be garbage. Or, Shakira is going to ruin the field in Mexico City, so we can't have that game out there, or whatever that's going to be. So, I mean, I don't envy those guys, not to mention having to take into account every other sport as well.
Right, college football, everything
like
else
that year
on.
that Baltimore won the Super Bowl, they had to start the year on the road because the Orioles were playing the same night. Kind of thing. So what a mess. But anyway, Ross, this has been great, man. Thanks so much for coming on. Really look forward to having you on during the regular season and seeing where these two teams are after the first 6 weeks. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where we're at. And I believe you're our first game after the bye as well. I think we're week 6 this year on the bye. So good news for you. We were terrible off the bye last season. That first game after the bye last year was that Miami game for the Bears, which was a disaster. And then we had the quote-unquote mini bye after Thanksgiving. We end up losing to the 3-8 New York Giants last season. So apparently extended time off is not a good thing for the Bears, or at least Matt Nagy hasn't figured that out just yet. So you have that working for you coming to Soldier Field, that apparently we take it easy on the break, and we have trouble snapping back into it. So we have to look forward to. So we'll look forward to talking to you again in October as we get ready for that game. But in the meantime, tell my audience where we can catch up with you on Twitter or online, or find your show.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you very much, and I definitely look forward to being back toward the rest of the regular season. We'll have you come on over at Locked On Saints as well.
Awesome.
Get some Bears thoughts for the listeners there. For me, you can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson ASC. You can also check out the website that I write for, which is allsaintsconsidered.com, which you can follow at All Saints Blog. There's also the ASC podcast as well that you can check out, and of course, you can hear me every Monday through Friday, thanks to the Locked On Podcast Network, for my show Locked On Saints. You can find on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and of course the Himalaya podcast app as well. So you go ahead and check me out there. And I love hearing from everybody, every team. I'm not one of those guys that's going to come at you if you're a rival team. I want to know more about the team. You know what I'm saying? So I'm always looking for more information to share with the listeners. So I appreciate everybody.
And I'm on the same page with you. That's why I do shows like this.
Exactly.
Because I've been doing this podcast since 2007, and
incredible.
Up until the 2015 season, these opponent preview shows were me sharing with my audience what I learned on my own about the teams. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be easier to have, the Saints version of me on the show as opposed to trying to, tell somebody, gives a Bears fan perspective on the Saints. How about we get a Saints fan perspective on the Saints? So here we are, and that's why I do this. And I can tell you, man, I've never had more fun doing the show than when I have people, from the other teams on. Just because, passion is like a shared language. We come from different places. We like different teams, but somehow we're speaking the same language and we get each other immediately because you love your guys like I love mine, and that's why we do this.
That's absolutely it, man. Just a blessing to be a part of it, man. I appreciate you.
All right, Ross Jackson from the Locked On Saints and AllSaintsConsidered.com. Thanks so much for being on the show, man. We'll talk to you real soon.
Absolutely, my brother. Thank you.
Ross Jackson from the Locked On Saints podcast, allsaintsconsidered.com. That's his blog. You can find him there and follow him on Twitter as well. Ross Jackson, I believe it's ASC, All Saints Considered, ASC, on Twitter. Great guy. Had a lot of fun talking to him. Again, I want to apologize to Tyler Raymond for my technical glitch. I should have checked the settings after the Skype update to make sure that the software hadn't been blocked. And it really pissed me off when that happened because it's happened to me before. So you can imagine how frustrated I was. I know you guys don't like it when I talk about technical glitches, but that one was just very funny to me that I let that happen. And, yeah, anyway. So I want to apologize to Tyler. He didn't get a chance to be on. Hopefully we'll have him back during the regular season. But Ross filled in nicely. I thought we had a great conversation. Good rapport between myself and my new friend, and this is a guy you want to be friends with. If he's coordinated live events that can get me next to Han Solo and, George Lucas and all those guys, then this is a guy you want to keep close. You know what I mean? He was at the – you know how many people are going to want to see that damn thing? And he was running the show today. How awesome is that? So, yeah, this is the guy we want to be friends with, somebody who can hook us up to get into to some really cool spots. So see what else Ross is up to, see if he can get us in somewhere cool. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, look forward to having Ross back during the regular season as well. And, again, any off the subject ideas, you guys want to hear that? I mean, if anything's good enough, maybe I'll turn it into an episode because, like I said, we have a couple of weeks between our last show, which will most likely be Lauren Cox come in and help us talk about the Bears. That's always number 14, the 14th and final quote-unquote opponent preview. And then there's usually about 2 weeks or so between that episode and the start of training camp. Maybe to fill the space, I'll do something like an off-the-subject episode, favorite summer movies, something like that. So if you got anything interesting, throw some ideas out there. We'll see. We'll throw them at the wall, see what sticks. So keep those ideas coming. Go to the Facebook page, Bears Talk Underground. There's a thread. Start throwing in some ideas there. Or you can hit me up on Twitter at BTU_Larry. So that's going to do it for part 1 of our Same Place Opponent preview episodes. Part number two will be on Monday when we have Brad Motter. It's Brad Motter. I was mispronouncing his name last year when I was calling him Brad Mater the Trader because he's a Chicago guy that roots for the Rams. Bastard. But no, Brad's a great guy, and his name is Motter, not Mater. He will be on the show to help us preview the L.A. Rams another interesting matchup, and he has something to say about the NFC Championship game and the no call and all that kind of stuff, and tons more about the 2019 Rams. I mean, this is what a way for us to start talking about these two teams that are most likely going to be in our way when we try to get to Miami in 2020 for the Super Bowl this year. Those are going to be the obstacles that are going to keep us from getting there. I fully believe that, and we might have to beat them both to get there. So these are the teams that we want to know the most about, so we know what we're facing when that time comes. So looking forward to the conversation with Brad and getting things underway. Then we move on to the AFC West. We got fully stocked guests ready to go there, and I just scheduled my last team, which was the Redskins. That was the one holdout. Couldn't find anybody to come help me out. We finally got someone to come on the show to talk about the Redskins. So the AFC East is accounted for, and of course our friends in the AFC North, Jeremy Reisman, Chris Gates, Evan Western, will all be back for those AFC North opponent previews towards the end of June, beginning of July is when those shows will be taking place. So here we are. We're in the thick of it now, and before you know it, the season is the summer is going to disappear right out from underneath us, and training camp will be here. We'll get to the preseason. The leaves will turn colors. The Bears will kick off Thursday night against the Packers, September the 5th. The 100th season of the NFL, the 100th season of our beloved in the NFL. And before you know it, we'll be well underway, and this horrible wasteland of a dead period in the NFL schedule will be behind us. So, but it's going to be fun getting there because I love doing these opponent previews, and look forward to our next episode with the Rams. So come back on Monday for Brad Motter from Locked On Rams to talk about the LA Rams. And until then, my name is Larry D, and this has been Bears Talk Underground.